Alright, so now that we are in Unreal, what do we do with it? We don't really know what to do. The first thing you might want to do is give it some color, right? So I'm not going to drag anything in here. We want to create a material. Now it seems like the material didn't get exported. Doesn't matter. You always have to do it manually anyway. So right click here and we can create a simple material. And we're going to call this dark underscore creature underscore mud. We double click this and it will open. This is the same thing as a material in Blender. So what this node here basically is, it is a combination of the principal node in Blender and the settings. So if we take a look here, we can see we have all the same inputs we have in the node over here. We have a base color, we have a metallic, we have a specular, roughness, anisotrophic, here, emission is the same thing, more or less. And it's the settings, so meaning when you select this node here, you have the settings over here. I know there are quite a lot of options, but we just need to focus on a few here. For example, on the material option, we can choose which material it should be. Earlier we used a post-processing, but now we obviously have a surface, so the base thing is just fine. And really we don't need to change anything here because it's a very basic material. Now all we need to do is right-click Vertex Color. And well, we have the Vertex Color and we can just grab this out here, plug this into the base color, hit apply, and let's take a look. We just don't see anything happening here because the vertex color of this sphere here is white by default. And if we take a look here, let me move this aside. Or I'm just going to grab this window here and put it onto the top here so we can switch. If we open up our skeletal mesh here, the purple one, our creature is still white. Why is that? Because we didn't apply the material yet. We can see under material slots, we have a material and our creature is still white. So why is it white? Because there is this material on there. It seems like it exported this material actually somewhere. Let me see where it is. That creature, actually it is in here. Let's just delete this. And we can just force delete. And let's go back to our dark creature. There we go. And now we just need to open the purple one here again. And you can see we have no material here. If we now go and select our new material, just select it, go over here to the dark creature and there's a little arrow. Either you can unfold this and find it in here, or type it in, dark creature, yeah, or with it selected, yeah, and click on this little arrow here and it will be in there. And it might take a second to load. It's maybe not applied. Ah, there we go. It's working. Okay. We can see we have the eye white, the rest black. Now though, we see the shading, right? We see we have shadow somewhere, maybe it's getting darker. We have a specular, some reflectiveness, and we only want it to be pure black and white. So we go back to our material and change this. Right now we're using the base color. It's the same thing as, like I said, in Blender. If we just make this here black, we still have shadow and reflection and whatnot. But if we shift a user emission in Blender and make this black, it's just pure black, no shading whatsoever. And we want this here, this emission shader in Unreal. So we just go to Unreal and instead of using the base color, we can use the emission color. So by the way, you can unconnect this by holding Alt left click. And then you always have to press apply so it recalculates everything. Back over here. So now seemingly nothing changed. Why is that? Because this base color is still active. We want to turn everything off, so we really only have the emission working. What we can do is play with the settings here and see if we can turn it off. We're going from over here, shading model, default lit to unlit. And you can see we only have the emission now, the rest is grayed out. We now apply this and go over here. We can see we have our pure white and black. And if we now go over here and drag this in here, you can see we have our pure white and black. So now save, Ctrl+Shift+S. Now generally speaking, the material editor from Unreal is very, very similar to Blender. I got used to the way of using math. So for example, I'm going to show you a few nodes which are similar to Blender ones by creating our Fresnel again. If you remember, in one of our earlier files we created Fresnel here, right? Which we very softly changed with a little bit of math. We can do this really quickly in Unreal as well because the math is just the same thing. I'm going to, let's open this up here, and recreate this in Unreal really quick. Well, let's just take a look first of all. We have the normals.product with the incoming also called camera vector. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the normal vertex, normal WS. It's all just about knowing which nodes are which and we want to dot product with the incoming. Now it's called a little bit different here. Here it's the camera vector ws, and we connect this. You will see we just get a simple Fresnel as we had before. All right, you can see dark on the outside. If we go over here, we can see dark on the outside. And we already recreated the first snippet here, this here. So now we inverted it. For the invert, the node which we have in Unreal is the 1 minus. And you will see if I connect this, it's going to be flipped. There we go, flipped. What is the next step? It's a power and a multiply. So if we drag this out here, power, what did we use? We used a 2.95. So select the node, go to the settings of the node over here, 2.95. And since it's math, it's going to be absolutely correct and will give the same result. And then we have a multiply, we said, multiply. What did we use? We used a 0.010, 0.01, selected, type in 0.01. And we can connect this. Let's take a look. It should be absolutely soft. Now it's that soft that we don't see it anymore. Yeah, slightly, we see it slightly. What is the next step? The next step is where we add the vertex color. We're just going to use our add and wrap in the vertex color. And if we take a look at our creature here, we have our eyes and we have a very, very soft. I don't even know if you see this, but it's very soft for now. Now I'm going to show you another thing. Let me mention one thing here because some people might not find this, but there is people love to use in Blender the xRgb node, right? Where you just like plug in a mask and then you can choose which color it is. Yeah? I'm going to show you, just because I can, the equivalent of this. This is the linear interpolate. There we go. We have 1 alpha and 2 inputs. So this is basically the same thing as the mix RGB, the mask, and then you can choose what is what. If you want to choose what is what, you can just hold 3 on the keyboard and you get like a color input here. And then you can like choose which color is where. Now I'm going to show you another feature of Unreal where we can in real time manipulate those values here, right? Because those 2 values, if we change those, let me, I don't know, make this a little bit higher here. This here, maybe a little bit higher. Yeah, that's my point. Don't exactly can play very well here. I just want to play with those values in real time without anything updating here. And the way we're going to do this, we hold 1 on our keyboard and press left click. And all this is, it's just a number, yeah? Don't be confused about what it's called and whatnot. All this thing here does is we can put in a number. It's basically the equivalent in Blender if we type in value. All it does is you can plug it in, yeah? Instead of just having the number in here, we can have the number down here and we can plug this in. Would still give the same result because it's just inputting 0.01, 0.01. And that's what this thing is. It allows us to have a separate node with a value. So if we now copy this value here, is 2.95, yeah, because this is what we're inputting down here. So instead of using this 2.95, we're just putting it in here, right? So we're going to press apply. So why do we do this? Because now we have the option to right click this node and convert it to parameter. Now it's changing, oh, scary, but it's really not as scary. Just name it. So we're going to call this power. And that's all it is. And we're going to apply this. We will have the option to change this here. We go back to our world here and we right click the material here and create an instance. An instance is just a copy of the original material. Okay. And if we know we need to lay this material, this instance on the creature again. So if you open this up, I have to select it here where the instance is selected and I open up the creature. We're going to change it from the original material, all right, to this instance we just created by clicking right click instance. So, and I click on here, you can see it has an instance in the back, so I know it's the instance. A short recap, we clicked 1 left click here to create just a simple value. We right clicked it, created a parameter. This will allow us to make it adjustable from the outside, from an instance. Yeah? And the instance we created by right clicking create instance, and then we get an instance, a copy of the original one. And that's all it is. If you want to change something, you do it in the master material. That's what it's called. And if you want to adjust it, you can do it in here. I'm going to recap this again so you know what I'm talking about. I double click this here and this window will open. You can already see here parameter groups. Power. Power is this node here. Why do we see this in here? Because we used a parameter. When you create like colors, so 1 on the keyboard, 3 on the keyboard, 2 on the keyboard, you can right click them, convert them to parameter. If they're converted to a parameter, they will appear in an instance over master material. And if we double click it, we can see it. So I'm going to move this next to it here. And you will see if I now move this number, how this will update in real time. So this way you can adjust things easily in real time. Even while playing, you can let the player have options to adjust this themselves, like a character creator. If you want to go back to your default, you can just use this arrow here. You can see we're back to our 2.95. Why 2.95? Because here in the master material, this one here, the one without int, we typed in 2.95 to be the default value. If you select it, settings, default value 2.95. You can also limit the slider, so it's not going overkill if you wanted to. And you can even sort it. You can just click in here and give it a name. For example, let's do this real quick. 1_Fresnel adjust. Okay. And we want to also adjust the multiply. So all we need to do is one left click. Well, there we have a value. What value did we use by default? This one here, copy it, paste it in here, connect it. So we replaced the value we typed in here by just a simple value node. Right click, convert it to a parameter, name it multiply. So we know what it is. And as soon as we converted this to a parameter and applied it, it will appear in the instance. Here you can see multiply. Now that we also applied this, you can see this node here is now in the group _Fresnel adjust instance. You can see 1_Fresnel adjust. And because this multiply here has no group yet, it's just stored in the global scalar parameter value. That's just what it's called, where everything ends up if it doesn't have a group. Put this also in the Fresnel adjust. We just click the arrow here, Fresnel adjust, apply, and we will see both are in the same group. So what if I want the power to be above the multiply? Because right, if you take a look, the power is in front of you. Maybe I want the power to be first and then the multiply. But here it's the multiply first, then the power. So that's pretty easy. There's a sort priority if you select one of those nodes here in the settings, sort priority. And the lower number will be shown first. You can see both are 32. So if I just make this one here, this power 31, so it's lower than the multiply with its 32. We apply this, the power will be first, and the power is first. And now we can just play with those settings. I'm going to move this over here, and I can play with that. Power usually just does the sharpness of the Fresnel. For your understanding, we should rename this. Go back to our master material, and we're going to right click on this. Okay, F2 doesn't work, it doesn't matter, just select and you can rename it over here. And instead of power, we're going to call this sharpness. Because in the end, this power is influencing the sharpness of the Fresnel. And this multiply is influencing the movement. So I'm just going to call this move. Now we have a sharpness and a move. Let's go a step back here. So if I move it in, you can see we're going to move the Fresnel very softly in. If I want it sharper, I'm going to increase the sharpness a lot. And move it a bit further in. Okay, there's a little bit of a problem. I'm going to explain this in a second. Let's fix this up really quick. Let's go back to our master material here. The number gets really, really high. And then the number goes into the emission, which is kind of like light, and then it blooms a lot. So basically what we want is that the number doesn't, it's capped at 1, yeah? It cannot go over 1. So all we're going to do is drag this out here. And there are two options we can use. First of all is a clamp, but clamp is very cost intensive. If you want to do something like that, you can just use a saturate, just a mouse over it. It says clamps the value between 0 and 1. Saturate is free on most modern graphics hardware, so it doesn't cost us any performance. And we can just plug this in here and move this over here. Press apply. And you will see that over here this bloom is gone. And now we can just really play with it. Very sharp. Already pretty sharp. And move it further in if we wanted to. Probably an add would be better. You know what? I actually think an add is much better. We did a little mistake there. Let's replace this here. Multiply. Drag this out. Use an add. Drag this in. And drag this in here. So okay, completely white. Let's reset them. I think I did another mistake here. I think the order is kind of mixed up. Let's swap out the order here. I'm sorry. Always a little bit of testing around. So apply this again. Reset it. Now things should work as intended. We can make it very sharp. And we can move it. Yeah, there we go. Very, very sharp. Not overkilling the bloom. And we can adjust it for now. So this is just a very simple example of how you can get things adjusted. Kind of my mistake here that I kind of mixed those two up. Just a logic thing, because very quickly, if we're using the power first, it's kind of killing the values we need in order to adjust it. So the add makes more sense in front and then it works properly. There's one last thing I want to cover here really quickly. you can see we're using the color output in the vertex color here, meaning we're using R, G, and B at the same time. But in the end, we really just have a black and white value here. So what we can do is just simply use another one here. Just use one, right? If you now apply this, go back to our creature, you can see we're getting exactly the same result, but only using one channel instead of using all three together. But like I said in one of the earlier videos, I don't actually want this. I just use this as an explanation. So all I'm going to do is use the red channel here, plug this in and hit apply. And I get what I want here. Though I'm going to keep the instance because it's good practice to keep the instance and put the instance on the material actually here, in the skeletal mesh, in the purple one, and put it onto the material. Because then whenever we do something with this whole thing, it's going to have this material. You should never click on something in here in the viewport and then put the material on. Rarely ever you want this. Maybe in some environment stuff, but definitely not for characters. But yeah, now we have the material editor a little bit explained and we have our colors here. Ctrl Shift S.